Welcome to Gummies for Grown-Ups with Martin Andelman, where we explore the world of THC gummies with insight, purpose, and a hint of humor. Dive into the science, legality, and benefits of gummies. Let's get enlightened.
Hi, this is Martin Andelman, and this is Gummies for Grown-Ups. It's a podcast where we're going to talk about gummies, THC gummies, Delta 8 gummies, Delta 9 gummies. You've probably heard about all different kinds of gummies because they're super popular. So I've spent the last 2 years studying cannabinoids. I know that sounds crazy. It all started a couple of years ago. My wife and I were back in California. We thought we'd go visit a cannabis dispensary. And my wife walked up to the counter. She's not really into this sort of thing traditionally. She walked up to the counter and said, "Do you have anything that's not very strong? I mean, something not very good." And to me, that sounded like somebody saying, "Hi, do you have any shittier pot?" Said nobody ever. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. The guy brought out something from behind the counter and he said, "Here, this is a 50-50. It's only 50% this and 50% that. It won't, do very much." My wife loved that idea. I looked at the guy and said, "Why do they even make those?" I mean, I came from the generation where if you were going to partake in cannabis, you wanted the best cannabis you could get. Nobody ever said, "I want something worse." But yet here she was. She wanted something worse. We bought a bunch of things. We came back home and I met a friend who said the same sort of thing. He said, he just uses a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I was like, I had never seen this before. I started studying it and learning about what had changed about cannabis. It got too strong. They discovered cannabinoids. Why didn't we know about cannabinoids? Well, apparently, until 2018, when the Farm Bill made hemp legal in the United States, according to federal law, until then, they weren't really allowed to research it. I didn't know that. I kind of thought doctors were allowed to research heroin if they wanted to. I don't know, but apparently not. So once they changed the law, scientists started researching this, and since then they've discovered over 100 different cannabinoids. And I wanted to know how they worked. 100 different things? Well, maybe if you put them together different ways, they do different things. And we spent 2 years working with a team to do just that. And recently, a couple of weeks ago maybe, Molecule, a scientific journal, a group of scientists actually published an article about how blending different cannabinoids can create very different effects. It's not just about, "Oh, I want to get stoned, man." That's maybe some, but that's not all. There's a lot of people out there that just maybe have trouble sleeping. Maybe you want something to help you sleep and you don't want to take, prescription drugs anymore. Maybe you've got pain and you don't want to take Vicodin or whatever they're doing now. Those things are awful. Cannabis solutions can be just gentler, nicer, far more effective. But you have to know what you're doing. So on this podcast, we're not just going to talk about, things that get you high. We're going to get into the science of this so that you can understand how this can make your life better. It all started because, pot got too strong. Have you noticed that? If you haven't, maybe you smoked back in the, high school, college days. If you haven't experienced cannabis since then, it's too strong. Way too strong. I got talked into it once a couple of years ago and spent like 2 hours on the patio with my head in my hands. It didn't used to be like that, right? Marijuana, cannabis, pot, weed, whatever we're calling it now, didn't used to be that good. Back in the 70s, everybody learned that they wanted to find the best pot. Do you know anybody who's got killer pot? Who's got the best weed? I want the best. Always. And we did that because, frankly, a lot of it wasn't very good at all. Nobody goes into a bar and says, "I only want the strongest alcohol." What's the strongest alcohol? Bacardi 151, that's all I drink. I only want the strongest. It's ridiculous. Nobody does that. But when it came to cannabis, we were all kind of trained that if you were going to do it, you wanted the best. Now, the problem is that is completely different today. The DEA, which published a study on this, said that the cannabis that they seized back in 1995, as compared with cannabis seized today, it's 20 to 80 times stronger today than it was back in 1995. Now, think about this for a minute. I mean, when I read that number, I was speechless. 20 to 80 times stronger? I mean, if there was something that you like to eat and it became 2 times stronger, there's a pretty good chance you'd never eat it again, right? I mean, if something's 10 times stronger than it used to be, then it probably requires a prescription now, right? Am I wrong here? I mean, if I were 20 to 80 times stronger than I am now, I'd have my own comic book series. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'd be the Incredible Hulk, 20 to 80 times stronger. And that's why if you're not a regular user of this, it's probably going to be pretty uncomfortable to try to get back into it. It's just too strong.
I can't smoke pot.
Now, this is Louis C.K. Have you seen this?
Sometimes
you can find it on YouTube. Just look for Louis C.K.
Like, can I get my portion of smoke without you alone later?
He talks about how pot's
I don't want
gotten
to stand in a
too
parking lot with
strong.
some 20. So these kids that worked at the club, they're like, "You want to smoke some pot?" And I'm like, "Yes." So I'm standing in a parking lot with these kids, like 20 years old, and we're smoking a joint. And I'm taking huge hits because I had no idea. I didn't know they'd been working on this shit like it's the cure for cancer. I didn't understand the fucking technology that's gone into making pot so powerful.
That's what I'm talking about, right? It's like they've been working on this, and what they're making today, it's nothing like we remember growing up. And that's why people have started to look at gummies, because gummies can blend cannabinoids to create very different effects. And there was just a paper in Molecule, a scientific journal, all about this. What's happened is that we're getting an education that we just didn't get in the 70s. In the 70s, we learned that marijuana or cannabis had THC in it, and it's the THC that got us high. That's all we knew. That's all we were told. That was it. Today, scientists have discovered over 100 different cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. Over 100. And the way that they're blended together changes how they affect you. So today, you can have a blend of cannabinoids, some delta 8 THC, some delta 9 THC, some that have an alphabet soup of names like CBG, CBN, HHC, THCV, THCA, and you'll see them seemingly everywhere. I mean, I'm here in North Carolina, but I go up and down the East Coast and go out west. They're everywhere. I mean, I've seen gummies at gas stations now, although I don't know why anybody would want to do that. And there's a lot of crap out there, and you have to be careful. If you're going to try gummies, let's say you're having trouble sleeping, and somebody tells you, hey, try these. They're, gummies, and you don't really know what's inside them, and it's a mess. They're going to need to regulate that better, and I'm sure they ultimately will. But as of right now, gummies are hot, and there's not a lot of regulation, and not a lot of people understand which cannabinoids do what, and what should they be taking. I mean, if you take the wrong blend of cannabinoids, you can end up staying up all night long, and if it were the right blend, well, then it would help you go to sleep. So it matters if you really understand how using THC gummies can, help you in your life. There's so many things that it can do. There are blends today that, make you happy without making you feel, stoned. Not everybody wants to be stoned all the time. Okay. I mean, I know there's a lot of potheads out there that are just stoned all the time. I can't do it. I mean, it's just too much. But I have learned that the right blend of cannabinoids in a gummy can be absolutely fantastic. Just fantastic. So that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast. We're going to try to do it in bite-sized pieces. I know it sounds like chemistry, right? It is chemistry, and chemistry can be boring or sound boring. But I promise we're going to really not make it boring. We're going to talk to PhDs, MDs. We're going to talk to all sorts of experts in the field. And we're going to try to enlighten you so that when you go out and say, hey, I want to try a gummy, you'll know what you're trying. You'll know what to try. You'll know what not to try. By the way, there are products out there that have things like THCO and THCP in them. That's not good. I mean, I wouldn't play with those at all. So it's really important on this podcast. We're going to tell you what is safe and can be absolutely lovely to do. And we're going to tell you what to watch out for so that you don't end up buying something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Have you ever had an edible and then it was too much? It's uncomfortable. I mean, I did it once. I had a friend of my daughter's make a brownie and get me to eat some of it. And I literally almost ran to my bedroom to get in bed and tell myself to fall asleep. It just was too strong. It made me uncomfortable. And then there are a lot of people that are more familiar with cannabis products, and they'll try something and they won't have enough, and they'll walk away saying, that was nonsense. That didn't do anything, whatever. The truth is, if you have the right blend and the right amount, it can be great. But you got to know what you're doing, especially nowadays, because there's just a lot of crap running around that doesn't really tell you what's inside. You want to always know what you're taking. You're a grown-up. That's why we're here. Gummies for grown-ups. So I hope you'll tune into this podcast. Today's not a real podcast. It's just sort of my introduction. I wanted to let everybody know what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be talking about. And it's going to be an engaging discussion. So I hope you will tune in. Gummies for grown-ups.
Thanks for tuning in to Gummies for Grown-Ups with your host, Martin Andelman, as we unwrap the world of THC gummies together. For the finest THC gummies for grown-ups, head over to Deltrium.com. Discover products designed with your needs in mind. Whether it's sleep, relief, or a boost of energy, Deltrium has you covered. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, when it comes to THC gummies, choose Deltrium. Only Deltrium.